Good evening. Welcome to the last live stream, the last Q&A session of 2024. Obviously, there won't be one next Wednesday because we'll probably be asleep on the sofa or too worse for wear, or, unwrapping presents or doing whatever. If you celebrate Christmas, that is. But why wouldn't you celebrate Christmas? Right. I would like, before I start the Q&A session, to thank Stefan today for bringing tears to my eyes. It wasn't anything that he said or did, but the huge amount of smoke in the dyno cell was just, you couldn't see the other end of the dyno. He knew that joining the breather pipes from the crankcase, the heads all together and teeing them all together would make the oil go through the turbo and out the exhaust. So, after I put that right, car did really well. 509 horsepower on a lateral performance twin entry turbo. Not bad at all. So, Q&A. Here we are again. Subaru questions, anything you like. Modifications, tuning, what works, what doesn't work. Stupid stuff, good mods, bad mods, whatever. I can see we got a few of the regulars and not so regulars sort of watching at the moment and saying hello. So if you haven't watched this before, say hello in the live chat. Say where you're from, what you drive. It's really interesting to see where people are based, because saw a comment from one of the Academy members earlier on that said, it was a mainly British channel. Yes, I am British, but weirdly, from the viewing stats that YouTube gives me, about 21% of the viewers are British. So, not quite mainly British. People all around the world are watching this, which is crazy. It blows my mind. It's 2 years now since I started doing the YouTube, and it's been a roller coaster. Been loving it. So hopefully you've found it useful. Hopefully you find these sessions useful. By all means, ask whatever you want question wise. Put a Q at the beginning of it. Helps me identify what is a question and what is just saying hello or a comment from someone else's question. Right, hi Neil, hi Joe, hi Mashiko, Colin, Viz, Sol. Right, okay, so we're getting some questions coming through now. Right, before I start, there was a couple of things I wanted to say, questions that come up quite often. Cylinder 4 cooling mod, I am yet to be convinced as to whether it actually does anything at all. I've never needed it, and I would never recommend putting one on. If you've put one on and it's working okay, I don't know how you would know that it's working okay, but if it hasn't broken anything, then yeah, keep it on if you wish, but I don't think it does anything useful. Prove me wrong by all means, but I don't believe in it. Other things I'd like to say, if you've got a question, get it in early, because it gets a bit crazy at the end, and quite often I cut it off when we get to the hour mark, because my voice can't cope with talking for more than an hour. So get your questions in early. As I say, put a Q at the beginning of it. It means I can identify it, and I will answer every single question. If I know the answer, I will answer it. Merchandise, if you are wanting merchandise pre-Christmas, the last UK order date is tomorrow at lunchtime. So if you're after a last minute Christmas present, then t-shirts like this or the other designs of t-shirts and hoodies ordered by lunchtime tomorrow, and you'll get them pre-Christmas. Right, okay. Augusta, GA, is that Georgia? I guess it is. Right. Right. Okay. Right. Let me start on a couple of questions. Right. Okay. DIY TGV deletes recommended for 400 plus horses on an EJ255. Yeah, the TGV delete, if you can do them in your country, I know in the States, if you're running on Carb or Ecotec, you can't do it because of the Green Speed initiative. But hopefully with the change of administration over there might be some bit more flexibility over there to be able to do that. In the UK on a EJ255, the TGVs aren't needed. They don't do anything useful. So yeah, it's worth taking them out, if only to get rid of a failure point, because they can jam shut, and once they're jammed shut, you can't get enough air into the engine through a little letterbox. So definitely worth doing. It's a pain in the arse getting the inlet manifold off, and sort of budget 4 or 5 hours, but it is worth doing. Right. Okay, hi Zed, how you doing, mate? Right, best way to do closed loop air fuel correction on Carberry. How do I normally do it? Manifold pressure versus air fuel correction. Yeah, how do I normally do it? It's pretty much the same way as you would on a standard ROM set. So you driving at steady load so that you're eradicating any sort of throttle tip-in arrangements, or sort of compensations, and just see how much fuel or how much fuel the O2 sensor of the closed loop is having to add or take out, and then make those changes in the speed density map for that sort of particular load cell, and kind of blend either side of it so you haven't got a really jiggly looking speed density table. Generally on that speed density table, as I went through with the Academy the other day, it kind of drops down towards idle and low load or low boost, but exactly the same as you would on the standard MAF based setup. So you'd be logging at a steady state rather than trying to compensate for throttle delta changes. Right. Right. Hello, Duncan. Nice to see you, and you too. If I could see you all, it would be crazy, blow my mind. But in some cases, probably a good job I can't see you. But enough said about that. Right, how can we change timings in according to a bigger turbo? I know that a decreased base map will be a good start, but how do we tune them with a general rule? A general rule: always start on the safest side that you possibly can. So make sure, from an ignition timing point of view, you're taking 3, 4, 5 degrees out of the base standard ROM, just so that you can get to a point where you can tune the fueling first, because you want to make sure that the fueling is at least in the right sort of region, sort of 10.5 to 11.5, so that you can then sort of start finding the boost and the ignition timing. So start safe. You can always add more up until the point you start hearing detonation, but don't ever rely on the ECU to tell you when it's detonating. Always make a set of deck cans. They cost, in the UK, the bits that I used to make the ones that I did the video on cost about £40. which is nothing compared to, the cost of an engine going bang. Every week I see examples where I hear detonation on my deck cans, but the ECU doesn't see it. Yet tuners are relying on the ECU seeing it to say whether it's detting or not. I find that incredible and extremely irresponsible and dangerous. For the sake of making some deck cans, wearing those when you're tuning it, two sources of information is always better than one. So start safe, data log, make sure the fueling's right first, or at least in the right region, and then start adding timing, making sure that it's nice and smooth and logical. And it shouldn't take you too long if the car's being well behaved. Yeah, quite often with a bigger turbo, because it's not having to work quite so hard, and not heating the air up quite so much, you'll find that you will be able to add more ignition timing as a result. So, pushing a TD04 at 1.5 bar, it's just generally just creating heat, whereas you could run a GT30 at a similar sort of airflow volume, and it's not even tickling it. Right, closed loop to open loop fueling. Having troubles with the car going into open loop a little later than I would like. How do I fix? On the map on those, there's a throttle position level that if it goes above that, then it will go into open loop. There's also an RPM level, which a standard is set at something like 4,300 off the top of my head. And the throttle position is set at something like 60%. To make it go into open loop a bit quicker, bring the throttle position threshold down to about 40 and the RPM down to say 3,000, 3,200, and that should go into open loop a bit quicker. If you want, Sol, if you send me your data logs and your ROM from this, and I'll review that for the live stream on Monday. Hello, Subaru Life. Right, hi David. Right. Hi Ankit, hi Nick. Do you have any flow data or power potential for a twin scroll TD04 19T turbo? Fan of the JDM manual BP5. Yeah, same as my old BP5 Legacy. I know mine made 301 horsepower, and that's UK horsepower. It differs dyno to dyno. And that was with all the cats still there. Without the cats, they're generally limited at about 320 on a BP5 standard top mount intercooler, because the intercooler is small and rubbish, for want of a better word. With a bigger intercooler, they will make more power, but you're probably into a region where the best bet would be to fit like a JDM STI Impreza turbo, like a 36 or 37. Obviously you'd need to change the downpipe because the flanges, I think off the top of my head, are different, but it would be a better setup for higher horsepower. I don't understand. Right, 2006 Impreza STI. How often do I need to change the MAF filter? Do you mean the MAF sensor or the air filter? Generally, the air filter, you change it when it's dirty or clogged. It depends on your environment conditions as to how quickly that is. But you need to open up the air box and look at the underside of the filter to actually see whether it's dirty or not. If you just take the top off and look at the top of it, you're looking at the clean side. The MAF sensor, they're despite what some people say, they are really reliable. You can clean them up with some electrical contact cleaner. Don't use brake cleaner, it's a little bit too harsh on them, and can leave a residue on them. But contact cleaner is very gentle. Only replace it when it starts reading really weird. They don't tend to just stop working, they just start reading weird. So I don't think I've ever seen a check engine light because of the MAF sensor. Maybe once when it was absolutely flatline dead, but they tend to fail gradually, and generally they fail so that they're under reading. Bum, bum, bum. How good is Cybex ECU at seeing det? Assuming it's been set up properly, and I'll set up mine when I'm installing a Cybex with the det cans so that I can see that the ECU is starting to see detonation when I'm starting to hear it. Once it's been set up like that, I could tune that car beyond that point without det cans because it is so good at seeing it and reacting to it. I always keep the det cans on anyway, just because it's, force of habit, but it is incredibly accurate. It will sense det per cylinder and will take it out per cylinder, at whatever RPM. But yeah, it needs setting up. Bum, 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 bum. Dorset Subaru, hello, just down the road. Where's that? Weymouth. Just looking at the no, that's Portland, isn't it? Okay. Every now and again, I keep getting a PO172 back one running rich on my 2.5. I changed the map since the new core packs and plugs. Had a map in 2015. Any idea where I can go next? Running rich tends to be either the MAF sensors playing up a bit, but if you've changed that, then that rules that out, or like an induction kit has been added, but generally that makes it run lean. So I would question whether that's the case or whether it was mapped and the induction kit, if you've got an induction kit, was scaled properly. Quite often you find that even on a standardish car, there's always some fuel corrections there, but it's got sort of 15% either way to work with, and if it can't get to where it wants to be within that 15%, then it'll throw up this 172 code. It could equally be an O2 sensor that is just not reading the right value for what it actually is. So yeah, it would be easy to plug in and see for me. If you wanted to bring it to the garage, then I can plug in and see what it is. O2 sensor would probably be my starting point, because if it thinks it's 14.1 but reality is 14.7, then it's gonna think it's trying to get to a value that it's not actually seeing. Right, really curious about Cybex Tiny Dash. Yeah, I've been doing some more work on that yesterday. It is an incredible piece of kit, but at the moment I don't think it's ready for the Subaru market. But my job, or my task that I've given myself, is making it ready for the Subaru market, because it will do data logging. It will enable you to have like 8 different boost maps if you wanted to, because inside that little piece of kit is like a mini Cybex ECU. So it's got all the boost control strategies from Cybex in there, which is immense. So you can switch maps using the calibration switch. even on an OBD car, this is where I'm trying to get to. So anything from 2001 onwards is to get it, even on the standard ECU, unmapped even, getting it to swap maps effectively, run flex fuel on it. It can do an awful lot, but at the moment the data and the setup just isn't quite right, and I couldn't put my hand on heart and say buy it because it's brilliant, because at the moment it isn't quite, but it will be very soon. Something a bit different. Do you think PMU or PDU will be the way to wire our cars as they get older? No fuses or relays required, simpler wiring. It is simpler wiring, a lot simpler wiring, no fuses and relays, but it does get a little bit complicated with PDUs and PMUs or whatever you want to call them. I had one in the race car, and it took an awful lot of setting up, whereas, you know, once you got your head around relay wiring, it isn't that difficult. It's an awful lot of rewiring to get rid of all the various fuses and relays. You're basically taking everything out and starting again. Probably fine if it's a track car, but for a normal day-to-day car or an occasional road car, I think it's probably a bit excessive. Right, hi Craig. Hawkeye WRX stock ECU versus Simtech. I would never install a Simtech in a car, full stop. I think they're an appalling ECU with some underlying issues within the software or hardware or something. But I've taken a lot of them out of cars and put Cyvex in, where the previous mapper had blamed an issue with the car, and had the owner chasing around left, right and centre fixing issues, but changing to a different ECU, and in most cases I'll put a Cyvex in or the standard ECU, and the car suddenly makes the power that it's supposed to make. So I wouldn't ever put one in. On a Hawkeye WRX, the standard ECU is brilliant. It can do an awful lot of things. If you want in sort of above 450 horsepower, for example, then, or 400, probably you start seeing real benefits. Then a Link or a Cyvex. But I would never put a Simtech in. And that's the new Simtech as opposed to the old Alcatech, which, you know, were perfectly adequate ECUs for non-drive-by-wire cars. Right. 06 Impreza WR Limited with auto transmission, making 291 horsepower, 18 psi boost, cop tuned. Head gasket went bad. Yeah, I'm guessing that's a 2.5. Not sure what it's going to take. With the engine out, heads off, I would recommend head studs for definite, and a decent set of head gaskets, but get the cylinder heads at least skimmed a little bit just to make sure that they're completely flat. While it's out, you might as well take the sump off and check that the oil pickup pipe is okay. And quite often you find when a head gasket goes, there is big end bearing damage, or the very high probability that the big end is going to go shortly afterwards. So it might be worth considering doing a full bottom end rebuild, or putting in a new like a 255 block or a 257 block ideally. It depends how bad the detonation is. The video that I did where where I recorded it in the headphones wasn't bad enough for me to lift off, but it was bad enough for me to take note of it and say that's probably enough, and then I'll take it back from there. But beyond that point, I would clean up that particular part of the map, take out a little bit of ignition timing at that point, or add fuel if it was detonating because it was going lean, and then give it another run and maybe try add timing a little bit later on. But if it's a huge cracker debt, which I haven't recorded for you yet because it's really hard for me to record it, because I don't want to make an engine have that sort of experience. It's certainly not a customer's car, and certainly not my daily driver because I need it. I will do something like that at some point when I've got an engine that will take it quite easily. But the first bit of detonation, if it's a little sprinkly sparkle, then take note of it and make adjustments in the ignition time. But I wouldn't abort a run just because I heard the little sparkle at the start of detonation. Boom, boom, boom. Right, Joe, when I'm doing a hard pull at about 6,000 RPM, car cuts all power, goes into limp mode, throws 244 turbocharger. Any ideas? That's an overboost code. So your turbo is making more boost than the boost limit that's set in the map. There's a problem with the map, or there's a problem with the boost control solenoid or the pipework. That's all that is. It's not a problem with the turbo. It's it could be a boost hose, or it could be within the map itself. Either the boost limit needs taken up a bit. Like if the boost limit is too low in comparison to the boost target, then it will kind of sort of wobble around on the boost target. But if the limit is too close to it, then if it passes that limit for quarter of a second, then it will cut, and your face hits the windscreen, and you get the churning in your stomach that you think you've broken something. It could also be altitude related, because there's different boost limits for whatever the atmospheric conditions are. So if you're going up high in a mountain, then the air pressure is going to be lower, and there'll be a lower boost limit set in the map. I would look at the map and see what the boost limit is compared to what the boost target is, and then see whether your actual boost levels are higher than the boost target, in which case you need to change the wastegate duty or make some kind of mechanical change. I'm not going to go on to that question. Right. But thank you, Yorkshire Petrolhead. I think that's probably a first for the questions. Right. What options are there for a GC8 non-OBD car? Really want to try and map it myself, but can't really afford an aftermarket ECU, I'm afraid. The only option you've got, if it's a version 3 or 4, is ESL door-to-board. You can sometimes pick them up second hand, where you may be able to get the lead as well with it. Sometimes they're advertised with the lead, and in that case I can provide you with the software that will allow you to get in there and make changes, or certainly point you in the right direction to make changes. But beyond that, if you can't find one of those, because they don't come up very often, it's a case of aftermarket ECU is your best bet. Probably a link would be the easiest option to start. Boom, 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 boom. A4 WRX, what do you think about the Quay front diff? I haven't tried the Quay front diff. Can it help to mitigate understeer? Understeer generally I don't know what the spec of your car is, but camber and suspension setup is probably your best bet of that. If you wanted to get excessive on that, then you can change the inner subframe pickup points, or use the sort of white line camber adjust kits, or the roll center adjust kits, which actually help that a lot as well. But I would say before changing the front diffs, I would look at the suspension and camber setup. Okay, doing a 6-speed swap on my 03 WX, but keeping the R160. My mouth isn't working today, sorry about that. 4.44 diffs, other diffs good, able to handle around 400. They should be able to handle that. I've got many customers running above that on those diffs and without much issues. It depends how violent you are at driving them, to be honest. Oh, okay. Hi, Joe. Yeah, that was a long day yesterday. It was a long day today, and tomorrow's an equally long day. Opinion on CP pistons? Yeah, I like those. They work. They're on the lower end of the quality, I think, but they're for. I think they quote about 150 horsepower a cylinder, and they should be fine. Generally, the pistons only get damaged by something else. They're generally a symptom rather than the cause of an issue. Okay. Boom, boom, boom. Right, bear with me 2 seconds. Right, okay, Marky, hi Duncan, I have a STR wagon version 4, previous owner had engine rebuilt and they used heads off a RB5. Yeah, it shouldn't cause an issue. The RB5 was just basically a UK 2000. There weren't any particularly special heads. But yeah, the version 4 heads would be fine equally, but I wouldn't go out of your way to make the change. STI 5 heads would be better if you could. Right, what injector size is needed for a VF28? It depends how much boost you run. VF28 will probably do around 340, 350 horsepower. So generally on that sort of horsepower, if you're talking on a classic or a GC8, the 440cc yellow injectors are just big enough for those for that turbo. If you're on a new age or a 2001 onwards, then the 550cc injectors are what you need for that. The 420cc, which are on the WXs or the Bug and the right, okay. Is this working alright for everyone? Because I'm getting some sort of issues with it at the moment. Might be interweb related. Right, any other questions that I missed at the moment? Okay, yeah. It was just pausing and stopping and like no one was talking, and then I couldn't get the stuff off the screen. So yeah, it's probably an internet thing. Right, can cold spark plugs help to optimise combustion? I'm considering one step colder. They can, but the problem with going too cold on the plugs, if you put in 8s in, for example, then the car needs to be driven pretty hard most of the time, because otherwise the plugs won't run hot enough to burn off the soot. So generally, for me, 6th grade plugs up to about 350 horsepower. Beyond that, 7th grade up to maybe 600 even. I've had 700 horsepower on 7th grade plugs, and they're fine. They just need replacing a little bit more often. 8th grade plugs for 700 horsepower plus, really, in my opinion. The only thing that happens with the hotter plugs, like a 6 instead of a 7, is it doesn't last quite as long. So depends what you're running. I don't know what your spec of car is there. Right, hi Shane. Yes, yeah, weird. That's the first time that's happened on one of these. I know I had some technical issues in the early days with sound and whatever, and it was incredibly frustrating for a couple of the sessions. But yeah, this is episode 43 now, so I thought I'd had all those issues ironed out, but I think that's an internet thing tonight. Okay, right, that's not for me, but that's for someone else, right? Right, does the 2006 WRX STI have weak engine mounts, or did that issue only concern the WRX? Are the group M mounts any good? Yeah, they're plastic. The engine mounts for the Hawkeye STI and WRX are plastic, admittedly hard plastic, but they are still plastic. And with some very spirited driving, they can break, and I've seen them break, and I've broken them. The group N mounts are absolutely fine. A little bit more vibration in the car, but it's probably a bit better than an engine mount breaking. It's possible to do with the engine in, change them with the engine in, but you really need to make sure that you're supporting that side of the engine, or lifting it up on a crane. Otherwise, working under there and the engine slipping, and you're losing a hand. So take precautions. What can stop the speedo and tacho working? Right, okay. It depends on a CAN bus car, i.e. 2008 onwards. It could be CAN bus issues. But on the earlier cars, speedo and tacho, if they're both not working, then I would say that's a wiring issue. Probably at the back of the dashboard would be, or the dash cluster would be my best bet. You can check as far as tacho, if you know the pin for the tacho reading on the back of the dash, you can check with a multimeter. It should pick that up, or down at the ECU end, see whether that's seeing an RPM signal. But generally, to me, that screams wiring issues. Piston choice for noise expansion versus having a hard life on track. Yeah, oh gosh. I've always had good experiences with Wiserco pistons. They've always worked well for me. 3 thou clearance to the bores, so you get the bores honed for the pistons, and they're not too noisy. But once they're warmed up, they're a lot quieter. I did build an engine for time attack car sort of about 4 o'clock in the morning once, using whatever pistons I had on the shelf, and there must have been about 5 or 6 hour clearance. It was incredibly noisy, but it lasted the time attack day the next day, so it was fine. Yeah, the Wiseco I like, but there's so many good pistons, and even the lower price ones are pretty good. Boom, boom, boom. Right, okay. So I don't know what was going on there with the stream. Right. Right. Hi, John. Would AEM Uego with FAE sensor be good enough for fuel mapping? Yeah, the AEM wideband works perfectly. The Bosch sensors are, in my experience, quite unreliable at the moment, so it'd be worth getting a backup one just in case it starts getting a bit iffy. They need recalibrating every now and again, so you have to do a fresh air recalibration, but they're perfectly adequate for fuel mapping. You can, from those from the AEM gauges, I think you can feed back into the ECU, so if you wanted to data log the wideband readings, you can do that. Do I consider upgrading headers to optimize turbo spool? It depends on the horsepower that you're trying to get to. The standard Subaru 2001 onwards headers are really very, very good, and the JDM twin scroll headers are even better. But they do have a limit on the standard, like a UK set of headers, STI headers, so without the cat in the up pipe, they start restricting the airflow out of the cylinder heads at about 400-ish horsepower, UK horsepower again. So you could at that point just port them like I did in the video, and that will allow enough flow to get to 5, maybe 600. But the pipe sizing on the standard headers is optimal. Subaru knew what they were doing. They designed them properly, rather than the cheap shit headers that you buy on eBay that are appalling, literally appalling. And, as you saw, I cut open a set of those, and the welds and the design is so shocking that you wonder whether they actually even knew anything about gas flow or anything really, to be honest. But the GT spec headers are worthwhile if you're going big power, but they're not really reliable, and wrapping them you think is a great idea. It keeps the heat in, helps them spool better, but it just makes them really prone to cracking inside the collector where the 4 branches go into the collector area, and once they've cracked in there, they're bin fodder. It depends on the power level. Generally, I like the standard headers because they don't break, and even if they do break, they're cheap as chips, and you can port them and they'll flow 500-600 horsepower. Right, Forester SF5 0177 PS, catback 3-inch fuel pump warbird turbo. How many PS? I don't know on PS, but horsepower I can tell you. You probably see around that 240 mark with that setup. Maybe a little bit more. You will probably find that you need to put a 3-port boost solenoid on there as well. Obviously it would need mapping, On the 01, because the Forester's a kind of a parts bin car, and almost every Forester is different from another Forester that should be the same. It might have the JEX ECU, the JECS ECU, in which case it's Ecotec only, or it might have the Denso ECU, in which case you can open source map it. So it depends. Probably the easiest way to tell is getting the ECU out and seeing what ECU is in there. But it will need mapping. But around 240 horsepower, whatever that is, 245 PS. I am doing well. Yeah, apart from eyes from smoking the dyno cell today. Did the late TY754 boxes handle okay for road use at 380 to 400? Yeah, you've got to be pretty brutal to break them. Having said that, I've seen people break them, but they're cheap and easy to replace. And quite easy and cheap to get rebuilt, whereas the 6-speeds are neither. They're very expensive to buy, depending on where you are in the world. They're really expensive in Spain and Portugal. I know that they're lots of money. In the UK, they're about 3,000 for a 6-speed setup. Maybe 3,500. I've got customers running sort of over 500 horsepower on those boxes. And they drive them hard, but they're not like snatching gears. So yeah, it depends how lucky you are, really. Do I have a preferred flex fuel sensor? Most of them are Continental. So regardless of whether it's a Link one or a Cyvex one or a Haltech one or whoever else is badging them up, they are underneath. They're all Continental flex fuel sensors. So there were the old larger body ones, and now they're slightly slimmer, but they're all the same effectively. Just don't get a CAN bus one because they don't work. Hi Sean. Do the new age JDM twin scroll headers need porting? Not. They're fine up to about 500 horsepower, and then I think there's a little bit of restriction in there, but yeah, they're fine. They're lovely headers. White line rear subframe lock kits. Yes, if you're doing a lot of quarter mile stuff, then yeah, worthwhile. I had the rear subframe lock kit on the Time Attack Subaru, and it was fine. Lightweight flywheels, was chatting to someone earlier on about that, and generally they're a pain in the arse. Makes your car, like if it's a drive-by-wire car, it makes it really hard to control the idle. Because the drive-by-wire throttle, the standard drive-by-wire throttle, is quite slow to react, so it can make it a little bit uneven, can make it more liable to stall, and yeah, I certainly wouldn't go very lightweight. If you're going slightly lighter weight, then great, but not lightweight. I think that's, you kind of then into the territory where you've got to have an idle that's above sort of 1200 RPM just to be able to keep it and catch it. Sverderstarker. Okay. Is that where that's come from, the PS? Right. Pat, hi Pat. 207 short block with EJ205 heads, I presume. What power will this engine run reliably? The short block, the most I've mapped on one of those standard short block is 640. The standard EJ205 heads won't flow that amount. The cams will kind of restrict it, sort of high 400s, about 480. Reliably 450-ish, you should be fine doing that. If you've got the ability to change the like the shims on the cams on the EJ205 heads to the solid buckets like the STI, that'd be a much better option. Yeah, right. The rear diffs, they don't often go. You've got to be pretty brutal repeatedly to kill those. New Ozspec forged EJ207 arrives in the mail today. Will they get it through the letterbox? To replace my EJ205 single ABCS. 2 questions. Do you know what the compression would become? I don't off the top of my head. It depends what pistons they're putting in there, really. Don't know the answers to that one, Jamie, sorry. ALP head studs, OEM or Tyler Torque specs. I love the ALP head studs. ALP have been making head studs since God was a boy. They know how to make them. I think occasionally there may have been some quality control issues, but the warranty is pretty good. And as long as you keep the cardboard box that's got the serial number for the head studs, then you're generally okay to get issues resolved. But I've never had issues with ALP head studs myself, and I've always used them. Apart from once for a customer's engine that I was building with RCM head studs, and they snapped while I was torquing them up. And I don't ever use RCM head studs anymore. Okay. How are we doing time-wise? Ooh, 7 minutes left, guys. Right. Up pipe cat and sports cat is going to pass the MOT. Or should I keep original downpipe for MOT? The up pipe cat does absolutely bugger all. So I would sack that off and get rid of it. Sports cat, if you get it warm enough. So what I do for MOTs here is I take the car there, get them to check everything that needs to be checked. If it passes emissions, great, but most of the time it won't. I then say, right, okay, let me take it round the block, warm it up, and give it absolute death. The left foot braking while it's on boost, just the whole boost, so that the cat is glowing when it goes back there, and it generally goes through with 0 on the hydrocarbons and carbon dioxide. So yeah, they've got to be hot to really work properly. So I'd try it with a sports cat, but you need to get them hot for them to work, and that doesn't mean just letting it idle for 20 minutes. Proper hot, boost hot. Right, do I see any 2017 WRX STI in a shop for tuning? Yes, I do. Love them. I think they're a better car than the GV and the GR. It's a shame from a quality point of view or a reliability point of view that the UK and the US are 2.5 rather than the JDM version, which is 2 litre. JDM 2 litre 2017 STI, awesome, absolutely stunning car. And it will not be long before I bring one of those in from Japan to have as my own little track toy, and that's just perfect. Hi Duncan, need some help with mapping my forged EJ 205 272 cams. Math scaling is halfway. Would like some support. Yeah, not a problem. Not a problem. Yeah, bung me a message on Discord, David, and we can chat about what you need. How's the Forester? Forester's good. Forester's going on the dyno just after Christmas. So yeah, we'll see how it does then. Yeah, it's been absolutely crazy in the run up to Christmas this year. I swear it's the YouTube effect and all the rest of it. And everyone that turns up at the dyno for me to map their cars, it's like, oh, Duncan have been watching the videos, and it's awesome. But it's been crazy busy. So a huge apologies if you've been waiting for replies on emails. Yeah, I get, like tonight, for example, I get back about half an hour before the live stream starts, got some dinner down that my wife makes for me, that it has to fit into this particular time slot. And then, depending on how I feel after I had dinner and after I've done the live stream, then I might look at emails. Yeah, hi Pat. Yeah. Merry Christmas to you, mate. Yeah. Thank you for everyone for your support over this year and the last 2 years. If you've been around for those 2 years, plans for next year are huge. It's just a case of finding some time or finding a way to make some time. Yeah, it's yeah, you want to make it as strong as possible. By the time you've done that, though, it's probably just as easy to get 207 block, and those blocks are, a thick wall 207 block. They are very, very strong. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I think we're at the end. Yeah, if it comes to Italy one day, yeah, we were supposed to go a couple of years ago. Or actually, time flies really, but because all the COVID stuff. Yeah, it was before that, and the flight got cancelled. I think it was the night before, and we ended up going to Madrid instead. Madrid wasn't as nice as where we were going to go in Italy, but there we go. Certainly not in the winter. It'd be much nicer in the summer. Right, okay. Any more questions? If you pop them in the comments, I will try and get back to them and try and answer them as best as I can. But if I don't speak to you or see you in person, I will wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And I will see you probably very early in January for another live stream. But there will be videos coming out over the Christmas period. So keep an eye out for those. So thanks for tonight, and I'll speak to you soon.